So a couple of notes here. I'm glad to see Paul Ryan, and I don't blame him for supporting Mr. Sensenbrenner. I think we can all appreciate that kind of loyalty for a coworker. But I'm glad that he brought up the issue of Medicare Part D. Medicare Part D, which again, our Republicans are responsible for, and Congressman Sensenbrenner was responsible for casting one of the deciding votes here. My problem is not with Medicare Part D, Congressman, and ours shouldn't be with Medicare Part D. It should be with the fact that we passed it without paying for it. If a program is important enough to pass, it is important enough to pay for. I don't care whether it's Medicare for our seniors or whether it's funding for our troops in Iraq. If it's important enough to pass, then have the honesty and the integrity to pay for it instead of kicking the bill down to my children. Now, I'm glad also that he signed the earmark pledge. I was the first to sign that earmark pledge, and my question here is, why now? Why after 30 years? Why not during the 6 years when you were in Washington and voting for the very pork that you talked about in these imperfect packages? The earmark pledge commits Congressman Sensenbrenner now to never voting for a single bill that has an earmark in it. Now, I was all for that, and I'm glad that right after I signed it, he did. But it's a little bit too late on this one. The tax system, there are some good alternatives. I mentioned again Congressman Ryan's proposal. Regardless of where we go, the thing I like about Mr. Ryan's proposal is that it is essentially it's incremental and long-term. This system is so complex, and by the way, my tax return took one stamp. It is so long-term, or it is so entrenched, and so many people are so reliant on it, on using accountants and massive accounting industry, that it's going to be hard to just simply overthrow in a single bill. So we need to have an incremental approach. Congressman Ryan's idea of allowing people to choose in and sort of opt in to a flat tax or something like that, I think is a good idea because it gets us there over the long term. Thank you.
I filed online for free. Next question. Do you think the United States should sign the Kyoto Treaty? Dr. Burkee.
I do not. The Kyoto Treaty is really, look, that's yesterday's news anyway, in that it exempted places like China and India, which we all know have grown exponentially, and they're really responsible for more and more of the world's pollution. And the last thing we need right now is any legislation that disproportionately benefits China and India, because we already have an over $200 billion trade deficit in places like China. To put a burden on our economy and at the same time benefit theirs is something that would be just highly problematic. It brings us back again to the issue of energy independence, however, because I started this campaign, some of you know, and look, there are some Republicans here who are just offended that I would dare cooperate with a Democrat, as I did when I first started this campaign. I will proudly say that I'm reaching out to Republicans, Democrats, Independents alike. We all should. We should remember that Ronald Reagan won his campaign in 1980 with the help of Reagan Democrats, because he reached across the aisle, and he reached out to all voters instead of specifically to those in his own party. I've long believed that we can find common ground on environment and on energy with a radical plan to end our reliance on foreign oil. When we end our reliance on foreign oil, when we build that infrastructure for wind and solar, when we invest heavily in alternative energies, when we especially promote conservation, which is the most rapid way we can diminish our influence immediately on foreign oil. When we do that, everyone's going to be happy. It's a win for Republicans because it robs our enemies of our petrodollars, and it's a win for even advocates of more regulation regarding global warming, because the single greatest impact on our environment from that perspective is automobiles that are reliant on oil. So it's a way we can really work across the aisle and cooperate.
I had a hand in killing the Kyoto Treaty. Speaker Gingrich named me the chair of the delegation to Kyoto. I went there. I saw what the Europeans and the Chinese and the Indians were doing to try to wreck our economy to their benefit. I let candidate Bush know how bad the Kyoto Treaty was, and right after he took office, he withdrew America's signature from the Kyoto Treaty. And he got a lot of criticism for that, particularly in Europe, because they pulled the wool over the eyes of Mr. Gore. The Kyoto Treaty's back. It's back in the form of legislation called Warner-Lieberman. And they say this is cap and trade as a way of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. That's a misnomer. It's cap and tax. And the taxes are going to be steep. Reducing greenhouse gases is not a free lunch. This lunch is very expensive. The National Association of Manufacturers issued a study in May that said here in Wisconsin, passing Lieberman-Warner's cap and tax bill will triple the cost of electricity and natural gas and give us $10 a gallon gas at the pump. And this is all a hidden tax folded in because everybody who sells these types of energies will have to buy carbon credits. I'm the ranking Republican member on the Select Committee on Energy Independence and Global Warming. I know how this bill will kill America's economy and put us into a depression. If you re-elect me, I will be honored to go to Washington to kill this bill just like I helped to kill the Kyoto Treaty. Thank you.
Next question. What measures would you push to address the crippling trade and federal budget deficits? We'll begin with Congressman Sensenbrenner.
First, spend less money. Have productivity-oriented tax cuts because they put people to work. We have to be aggressive in defending our intellectual property rights laws against piracy all over the world. We're the most inventive people that God has ever put on this world, and we cannot let the inventions that have made this economy the most productive be stolen by countries like China and India that pay their workers $1 an hour and don't give them any benefits, because we can't compete against those type of sweatshop wage countries unless we are able to keep our productivity edge. That's what we need to do to put health back into our economy. We also need to use some common sense in what we do in terms of trade. Now, I point out that a lot of the critics of free trade blame Republicans for promoting free trade. NAFTA, the World Trade Organization, and most favored nation status for China were all signed by Bill Clinton. We have to protect American manufacturing. That does not mean we should be against free trade, but we've got to be aggressive when countries like China don't play by the rules. We haven't been thus far, and we ought to start right away if we haven't started yesterday.